in Germany when you're expected to do the same thing 10 years down the line? And I said, no. I mean, I am worth more than that.
Sure.
I'm not so desperate that I have to stay in a country where, people were offering me, why don't you do a course on old age home care? Or why don't you do a course on nursery, school teacher, which most of the women were doing there, very quite happily. And I said, should I go down that same path? Or should I just go down back to my own country where I might get a lot more options?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Desi Return. Today, I am excited to have Sheela on our show. Sheela went to Australia and Germany, spent close to 18 years abroad before returning back to India. She came back to India 4 years ago and has been living here in Hyderabad and working as an associate professor in the university. I'm really looking forward to our discussion, especially someone who is in academics, how the life has been in academics for someone in different countries, as well as also the kids, growing up in different countries with different languages and some of those insights. With that, welcome to the show and glad to have you on our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. So if we can start with a bit of a background, what made you to leave India to go abroad? So that would be very helpful.
Yeah. So my name is Sheela Surenarayanan. Been born and brought up in Bombay. My parents were born and brought up in Kerala, but originally from Tamil Nadu. So I have quite a mixed background. But I did my master's in geography from Bombay, and I did my second master's in development studies from Pune. And I was a lecturer for 1 year in St. Andrews College in Bombay. And then I got married, and for 1 year I was in UK. My husband got a Commonwealth scholarship to do his MPhil for 1 year. And there I worked at Ministry for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. It was a ad hoc kind of a job, but it was on geographical information system. So it was a skill that I had in my pocket. I would remove whenever I need to. So I worked, then we came back to India. So we had two comebacks, So one comeback was in 1998, after about 9 months in UK. And then I worked for almost 4 years in a gender research institute, which was Institute of Social Studies Trust in New Delhi. And I was looking for my PhD. At that time, I was about 28 years old. So I came back in 1998, I was 28. Looking for PhD options. And it was so difficult at that time, I found, because you need to have an MPhil to complete your PhD, even to start your PhD. And then you had a 1 year coursework. And for somebody who already has a family, it was almost impossible to do a 1 year coursework. And like both of us were earning. And a family like that to, start a PhD, there was hardly any scholarship options. There was this NET exams, which was, the only way you could do it is NET JRF. And so the options were kind of limited. So my husband was trying for a PhD in Australia. So he got the IPRS scholarship to go to Australia. And we were almost at that point of time, even purchasing a house. We were almost settling down in Delhi. And suddenly I get this phone call. And I had got into a government job. So it was a direct ICSSR JRF Junior Research Fellow appointment in CWDS. So Center for Women's Development Studies. Now it's grown into quite a big, almost like a university network by itself. And I had to leave that job and go to Australia because I couldn't manage with my single salary in Delhi. And after going to Australia, it was there's a first, a feeling. I had my 3-year-old son with me, 2.5 years old. And that whole experience of him struggling, like he was a pakka, Punjabi speaking. He wouldn't say, Maine kiya, he would say kara. He would correct my Hindi, my Bombay Hindi used to correct. So pakka Hindiite. And going there and forcefully trying to learn this English language, we were forcing him. Okay, now don't speak Hindi anymore. Now English is your language. So now we then moved. Then I got a scholarship. After that, so it was a very lonely period for me, 1 or 2 years, because my husband was doing his PhD. What was I doing? My son used to go off to school, and the houses were almost, 30 meters. They were so away from each other. Even if somebody is dead in your neighbor's house, you will not know because it's quite far away. And it was in Brisbane. So that lonely era in Australia, and then eventually I got my PhD. I got the same scholarship. I got a scholarship for, IPRS, same thing. Then he finished his PhD and he wanted to shift to Germany. So in the middle of my PhD, I'm shifting to Germany with all these two children. My second son was already born. And we're shifting to another new country where it becomes night at 4:45 p.m. and you don't know what to do with your life. It's like suddenly going to the North Pole from a bright area, and another completely different cultural shock in my life. But I tried to I was finishing my PhD, so it was the time gap was so much. So I used to still get in contact with my supervisors, and somehow I landed up finishing my PhD. It was a big struggle because the daycare centers were not very good in Germany, as they were very good in Australia, but they were not good in Germany. And then I finished my PhD, did my German class, and it was in a country where you don't know one single word, and you're made to look like a fool because you don't know the language. It's not that because you can't read the instructions. So you're going up and down the lift and you don't know what is in and out, what is exit. So people make fun of you thinking you're some, illiterate or something like that. Look at this, uncultured, foolish. But actually the fact is you don't know what that, you can read it, but you don't know what it means basically. So those kind of experiences, and my children struggled quite a bit in Germany. I would say it was quite a struggling time for both of them. And then at some point of time, I realized that I had hit a glass ceiling. So here also, I tried to make the best of what I had. So I already had a PhD from School of Public Health from Australia, and I tried to get my own funding. So I got at least 2 fundings from the German Research Foundation, DFG, which was quite competitive. So you have to sit at home, write these project proposals, submit them, meet professors, network with them, alliance with them, and then you submit the proposals and then you get the funding. So I got 2 very good funding. So one was on surrogacy in India. Second was on, the whole concept of Vamsam. So both Indo-German comparison, I did a comparative study. And eventually I realized that the day your funding finishes, they don't want to give you a penny from their funding. Okay, they don't want to support your position at all. So as long as your position is supported by some external funding, they're happy. The day your funding is over, they say, okay, pack your bags. And then you're down to, looking for odd jobs and things like that. And at that point of time, I did do some kind of, odd jobs in Australia. I was much younger. And then in Germany, when you're expected to do the same thing 10 years down the line, and I said, no, I am worth more than that. Sure. I'm not so desperate that I have to stay in a country where, people were offering me, why don't you do a course on old age home care? Or why don't you do a course on nursery, school teacher, which most of the women were doing there, very quite happily. And I said, should I go down that same path? Or should I just go down back to my own country where I might get a lot more options? So I, tried to convince my husband. I said, come, let's go back. You have hit a glass ceiling, I have hit a glass ceiling. So we were not getting any professor position there. It's something called habilitation in Germany. You have to do your second PhD to actually become a professor. And your PhD has to be from Germany.
Okay.
They had these rules. And it was almost impossible. I had a talk with my supervisor. He said, why would I give you when I have X, Y, and Z? And he's not a German, mind you. He was from, I'm not taking names. He was from USA. But he said, why would I give you when I have these three in my box? So that's when I realized that I'm not going to get that position that
Sure.
I deserve. And I realized that younger people, younger colleagues of mine who were maybe 20 years younger than me, they were doing their habilitation and becoming professors. But just because I'm immigrant in that place, I was not getting my worth. So that's when I came back to India. So that's my journey overall, how I came back to India in 2020,
20. Yes.
4
Great.
years ago.
No, thanks for the detailed. So if we can peel off little things here. So I'm assuming your husband was also into academics. So he also did the PhD. So just curious in terms of, it's just that there is an opportunity for him to join a university in Germany versus in Australia, or is it a very, decisive decision to move to Germany, or it just where the opportunity happened to be? And so you guys moved there. Just curious on that.
I really don't know what happened there because because Germany was a very out of the box thing. It was
Yeah.
not in our radar at all.
Okay.
And in fact, I was getting part-time jobs while doing my PhD. And he had finished his PhD and he was struggling to get a job. So I don't know what was going on in his mind that he said, okay, in 10 days, we are moving out to Germany.
Got it. Okay.
It kind of just uprooted what I was like kind of just starting to, build roots, and the children as well. They were well settled. My son was already in class 1. He had forgotten Hindi. He was speaking Australian English, and he was in class 1. And then suddenly we come to Germany. So at that point of time, we were also getting jobs in India. But he convinced me by saying that we'll get some international experience and then come back to India. But that didn't happen. So initially, he got a 1.5-year contract. But then he wanted that international experience.
Got it.
1.5 became 2, and then it became 3.5. Then he got another project. So this just went on. But he was not getting much options in Australia because Australia, we were unable to get citizenship.
Yeah.
In Australia, the points is very much based on your your age. Age carries a huge percentage of points to get citizenship. And we were we were in our 30s. We were 35. I was 35. He was 37. So that age group, you get very less points. So maybe he wanted, the passport was the main factor.
Got it.
Yeah, that's how we moved to Germany.
So I think you mentioned it's for the career opportunities, that glass ceiling. Were there any apprehensions moving to India, especially after spending 18 years abroad? So just curious. I know that career options is one aspect, but there could also be like, whether you could fit well, or like the other aspects, and anything that you have considered. How did you weigh your decision, and how you convince your husband to make the move back to India?
So basically, as I told you, I moved back alone because he had his apprehensions were probably a lot more than mine. I was full of apprehensions, but I knew it's not working there. Okay, so I just took that plunge because I knew it's India. And I had this very good friend, Nidhi Vadhavan. She was for some time with me in Germany. So she had been in contact with me all the time. She was motivating me on the phone. And I just took the plunge. I came to India. And by the time I was already applying everywhere. So I was applying to countries in Europe. And how I took that plunge is in Germany, you have the Center for International Migration and Development. It's called the SIM program. So people, academics and workers, especially people who have worked and studied in Germany, this program helps you to make a return back to your home country.
Oh, okay.
So this program was really helpful for me. So they had these missions where you can come back to India and do smaller missions. So I got involved with them, and I was in India on a mission with them. And their entire program is towards, the migrant Indians and also other countries. They have the same program in other countries. They help you to find jobs. But fortunately, before they could help me, I found my job. So I had applied to, Jadavpur University, Pondicherry University, and to University of Hyderabad.
So I think you kind of touched a little bit about this. So if you can expand a little bit more, I mean, especially the kids adjustment, with both your kids, right? They are at a different stage, when they were born. So if you can talk a little bit about, their challenges or how they were able to successfully navigate, some of these, things that come up while moving from one country to the other country. I think that would be helpful. This is some common question or something that back off in the mind of a lot of parents, right? Especially somebody moving to a different country, how the kids can cope up with the new language, how well they can adjust, or any tips and tricks from your perspective that you can share with our audience.
Yeah. So my elder son, the first Sudarshan, the first challenge that he faced was he was this Paka Hindi speaking person. And then we were like forced to make him speak English. Now, okay, you forget that language. This is the most priority language for you. And he did face quite a bit of racism in his, nursery school. Like they used to keep, there was another Indian child. They would put them separate and say that, these two cribbing, crying Asian kids. Whereas all the Australian kids would take part in, programs and things like that. And these were red flags that we didn't, we just overlooked at that point of time. But his school was really good. He went to Ironside School in Brisbane. It was really, his teachers were really nice. So we had this mixed experience in Australia. Then he had become really good in English. Okay, so he had picked up good English and he was well settled in the school. My younger son was born. So we had a very good daycare there and everything was going on fine. Suddenly we moved off to Germany. At one point of time, I remember we were at Lidl, we were at a shopping. Lidl is a common place where we buy all our groceries in Germany. He started sobbing. I can't cope up with Germany, he said. That I'm getting, because in German, children are very, ruggish. They like pull and push, and they are, nobody will bother. The teachers will not say, oh, don't do that, and things like that. So he was also getting some kind of, physically, some kind of problems in the school. And he was sobbing. He said, I want to go back to Australia because why are we here? So I had no answer to that. So the only way I told him is that, okay, you learn the language. See, whatever you want is right here, but it's all in German. So you learn the language. So second time, the poor child had to learn a completely alien language he had never learned in his lifetime. And by the time my younger son was growing up here, he was listening to 4 different languages. So Tamil, Hindi, English, and German. He didn't talk for 1.5 years. Then eventually he started talking. And eventually when he started going to class 5, 6, he faced a different kind of racism. So he was, at one point of time, the teachers had put nothing. It was nowhere near cybercrime. They were having like these are 4th, 5th class students who were having a banter in the WhatsApp. Okay, so suddenly we get a letter from the school that, okay, your child has been booked for this. And we said, what? He's just 7 years old. How can he be booked for something as serious as that? And we looked at all the material. It was nothing like thumbs up, hey, laughing and, emojis. And we were called to the school. And we realized that only 3 students who were actually immigrant students who were cornered. And why? Because there was one boy whose father was very influential. He was actually a principal in another school, who was teased by these boys. They were teased by other boys as well, but the main targets were these immigrant kids. And I went to the school along with my husband, and they wanted our signature. Basically, they wanted to suspend him from school for a week. And I lost my temper. I said, "Do you even have children? I mean, this is not even cybercrime. Just look at this is the normal children having a good time with each other. And how can you call it a cybercrime?" So they were very insistent. And my husband was, by the time he had become so like 18 years abroad and all, and especially in Germany, people start becoming this. I have to follow the rules. That's it. It's like that dog also that won't cross the road unless you see that green signal. People feel pride about it, but that's how human beings we become.
Yeah.
We become those herds where we are not using our own brains at all. I had a similar experience with Australia where some of my diaspora friends used to tell me, no, you're not supposed to criticize. Why? Because it's like, this country has given us, shelter. We are not, we're not refugees. We have a good country out there. We can go back anytime. So, but there's always this fear. So similarly, there was this very, my husband had already got tuned into this, very straight jacketed. He went and signed that letter of suspension. And he was suspended for a year, failed 1 year for no fault of his. And that's when I realized, okay, my career on one hand, these kids are suffering. Okay, and then my husband started telling, okay, you're not finding a job. Why don't you do odd jobs again? And I said, that's not. So my elder son was a big support for me in that way. He said, you just have to try everywhere, and you have to try India.
Yeah.
So that's when I took that huge plunge and coming back to India. My younger son, he did not know either Hindi or Telugu or any other Indian languages. So it was a struggle for him as well. But I got him admitted in Meridian School, which had a second language was French. And now he too has settled quite well, fortunately. We came when he was in 9th standard. Now he just completed 12th. So he had his own story. So born in Australia, brought up in Germany, and then died.
So I think it's a good one. I mean, I think so since you brought up about your younger one, so this is also another very common question among the parents, especially someone moving at that age, especially when they are in like 9th grade or 10th grade, it's just going to be much, much more tough. So I know you mentioned, I think he's already in the 12th grade. So if it is okay, I'm assuming, was he in an IB curriculum when he moved to, was that in a CB? If you can share like what curriculum, and also like what you were thinking about maybe after the 12th grade, what kind of universities he's planning to apply, like how he is approaching in terms of the graduation program. Yeah.
Okay, so when he came, I mean, both my children were in German school. So government school, we were academicians, so we could not have. We were only UN, employed taking IB schools in Germany. It's extremely expensive. It's 1,000 euros per month. It's not affordable by us. But both my children were in German medium government schools. And that's how my elder son got the German passport, because once you finish 12th class, you get a passport. So when he came here, English itself was a second language for him. So the fear was, people used to say, you're going back to, especially the Indian diaspora. The German people were quite understandable. They were said, okay, you're going back to your country. So they used to actually ask me, why don't you go back to your country? How can you stay for so long? Because they don't leave their country as much.
Yeah.
So when we came here, the Indians were telling, oh, he's going to fail in mathematics, he's going to fail in English, all that. And eventually, it took a lot of time. I must say the Indian teachers were so good. They, were very accommodative in knowing that he had made this complete cultural change, and they helped him quite a bit. And friends helped him a lot in studies and everything. So until 12th, now he's applying. So he's finished his 12th from Meridian School itself. I wanted to change after 10th. He said, no, I have good friends here. I don't want to change. So now he's trying for NMIMS. So he has an Indian passport.
So I thought he was born in Australia, right?
He's born in Australia, but you don't get a passport automatically just by birth. It's not like the US.
Got it.
You had an Indian passport. I had an Indian passport. So eventually, he's just like any other Indian. So he's applying to NMIMS, so many colleges for BBA.
So I'm assuming he actually went through maybe some of these competitive exams, JEE or whatever, so that's the path he took. And so he comfortably gets settled in the last 4 months. I mean, 4 years, right? I think even though Hindi might not be the, his main language, but using the French language as second language, he was able to navigate through the education system and be able to comfortably participate in these competitive examinations to get admission in these colleges. Okay.
Yes. Of course, you asked me about the challenges when I came back to India. What apprehensions I had. I had a lot of apprehensions. And because I had not lived in India for 18 years. I was coming as a tourist, all very exotic, go back, do some shopping, meet friends, that's it. And then go back to that wherever you came from. But coming back to India was not that easy because even when it came to my career, also when it came to personal things. But I'll say after all the challenges, I managed, because this is a country I know better than any other country. I've lived my first 23 years in this country. So I know how to maneuver. I know what to do when I get into a trouble. It's not a situation where, like, for example, we have been in court in Germany because a neighbor, the downstairs neighbor, they filed a case on us that we are walking too much in the house. Because it was a wooden houses.
Yeah.
So, too noisy. These Indians, they're making noise with their vessels. We have a lot of steel vessels, of course. So we wash vessels. All that noise was affecting the lady downstairs. So she filed a case on us. She actually used to come and bang our door and all that. So we went to the court, and we didn't know what the judge was saying. We needed an interpreter for them.
Yeah.
So here again, I had to go to court, for another reason, for my career reason, because I was made the head of the department, and my colleague went to court because she argued that she was more experienced. But I didn't have to, need an interpreter. So I could fight my own case, and it's my motherland, it's my country. So I know what to do. I know how to maneuver. It's not that there were no challenges, but I feel academically also one thing that also was both a pull and push factor was that I work on women's issues. So I work on women's empowerment. I worked since 1998 on this topic. And I wrote a book when I was in Germany on transnational surrogacy. And so the fact that women, are making strides in India. So at some point of time, the employment rate was increasing in India for the last 10 years. The percentage of women who are holding bank accounts, asset ownership was increasing. All that was happening. I know what was happening. But I could not contribute to it as much as I was when I was in Germany. So people, academics living abroad, Indian academics living abroad, they might be thinking, okay, I take this Indian projects, I come to India, do a study, go back. But you cannot, I realize that you cannot contribute to the society as much as when you actually come back here. Because now I've done 2 projects, one on Beti Bachao, one on the handloom sector, both on women's empowerment. And the kind of contribution I've been able to make after I come back here, it's a huge difference. You cannot do that sitting, in a
Abroad.
long distance. So whether it is teaching, whether it's research, whether it's policy initiatives, all kinds of inputs you can do. You can give your maximum when you are here, right here. Yeah. So now you're in the society. You know what is going on, and then you can give your inputs.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely. I mean, I think the proximity plays a big role, especially like in how you can influence and how you can make a bigger impact. From your perspective that you want to share to people who are considering about moving back to India or thinking about it or who hasn't made a decision, any advice that you can share from your perspective?
So one thing I would say is apply. Start applying before, if you were thinking of coming back, you should start applying at least a year before or 6 months before. So you know what field. So I was very clear that I want this associate professor job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was applying universities based on. So first thing first is you start applying, and come down when you get one thing that is near to what you want to do, and then keep applying. If at all if you get something like best fit, you may not get immediately, it might take some time, but you can always get something after you come to India. Finance is one thing that you should keep in mind. Like I had this property, a joint property, so we did sell that property eventually, and that money got invested. Otherwise it's a bit of a struggle as to what. So that's one factor that you need to look into. Otherwise, I think India has really, it's like a smooth landing, because the kind of UPI payment, the kind of digitization that has taken place in India since I left 18 years ago. I remember applying for a passport was so difficult. It was such a cumbersome process. Aadhaar card, voters ID, banking, UPI payments, right from vegetable vendors to wherever you might go to shopping malls. I don't think this kind of UPI payment is there anywhere in the world. Once you have like these 2 things set, your application processes and your finances to some extent, then everything else just kind of, you can fit in place, because eventually it's more difficult living abroad than living here, because you have to clean your house yourself, you have to do everything by yourself. Here it's easier to find help. It's your country, you can speak your language. So many things that have changed in the last 2 decades in India. It's quite smooth sailing, I would say, if you have your job and finances slightly in control.
Yeah.
You might still face some kind of hiccups, but it's not like major hiccups. It's something that you can manage.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's true. I mean, I think the changes, some of these UPI payments, as you said, how things have evolved in the last couple of decades. Yeah, so thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your journey with us, especially like, spending 18 years in multiple countries. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your journey with us. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.